Hello everyone. We'll just wait for a few minutes for everyone to join in and then start with our session. Good evening everyone. Thank you all. Thank you all for joining in. We're still waiting. 2 minutes to go. Okay. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining in with such great enthusiasm. As Rorsa, we are all very excited to bring to you this unique creative session along with our friends Purva, Kabini, and Parinita. This is Rorsa's second presentation as part of the series of deliverables created by researchers, academicians, artists, activists, and river lovers as part of Rorsa's subgrant. The first session was Rights of Rivers in a Situated Context about Aganashini River. You'll find details about the session in the chat box below. Before we proceed, for all those who are new, we would like to give a brief introduction to Rorsa. So Rorsa stands for Rights of Rivers in South Asia. As you all know, South Asia is home to millions of vulnerable communities who are dependent on nature for their basic needs. Extractive practices, commodification of nature, ineffective governance practices have devastated the ecosystems and resulted in extensive loss of livelihood and cultural heritage. Along with that, climate induced changes are further causing significant challenges. In this context, the Rights of River framework offers a very compelling approach towards these complex interrelated transboundary problems, both in South Asia and globally. And therefore, recognizing the need for transboundary collaboration, an alliance called Rights of River South Asia emerged from a dialogue in March 2020. RORSA is committed to representing the interests of free flowing rivers and healthy rivers and their dependent communities in South Asia. So basically, what are river rights? Bringing in ideas and the vision of Universal Declaration of Rights of Rivers, RORSA has drafted our own vision, which is a river's right to be healthy, river's right to maintain continuity, a river's right to be in her own spirit and meander at her own wish, river's right to protect her own watershed, the right to be dam free and to be free from interlinking, and ultimately the right to meet the ocean or the sea. In this context, the legal journey of rights of nature in South Asia looks a bit like this. Starting off with India in 2017, where the river Ganga and Yamuna, Gangotri and Yamunotri glaciers were granted the status of legal persons. In 2018, the entire animal kingdom were granted right equivalence to that of a living person. In 2018, in Bhutan, the Royal Court of Justice of Bhutan created a green bench which has jurisdiction over environmental cases brought by any person as a trustee of nature. In 2019, the Turag River was accorded the legal person status. In 2020, Sukna Lake in Chandigarh district was given the right of a living entity, also the rights equivalent to that of a person. Nepal has been proposing rights of rivers in its new bills and also is making attempts to grant rights to Mount Everest. And Pakistan is rising and emerging as an emergent movement against dams and diversions of rivers and recognizing rights to Indus River. In this, it is important to point that the 2017 High Court judgment, which gave rights to Ganga River, Yamuna River, has currently been stalled in Supreme Court of India due to various technical and legal reasons. So, this entire narrative of rights of nature, and in this case, rights of river, takes lead or has its foundation in the indigenous and riverine communities. Its aim is to elevate women leadership, to recognize and grant rights to rivers, and radically reduce dam-induced threats and threats to fresh water. With this in mind, Rorsa's dream is to restore health of rivers where wildlife and biodiversity are thriving and riverine communities live with dignity, and to transform the current anthropocentric jurisprudence to that which respects and recognizes the intrinsic connections of humans and the rest of nature. We wish to take ahead all of these aims and dreams in following manner: through advocacy, through education, through campaigning, and through bioregional governance, which aims at reimagining governance systems from an ecological point of view. Ultimately, we believe that the journey of a river reuniting with the ocean is symbolic. This unending cycle of flowing freely and reuniting is crucial for planet's hydrological cycle and sustaining all life forms. With this background in mind, today's session aligns with Rorsa's objectives in a way of reaching out to many more people and communicating the idea of rights of rivers through the medium of art. While we are aware that the framework of rights of nature, and in this case rights of river, is a legal tool which is trying to make way in the anthropocentric paradigm of environmental laws of the 20th century, and that there is a need for a paradigm shift in the legal spheres. And fortunately, we have legal institutions, tribal courts, researchers, activists, lawyers who are playing their part in making this shift happen. But we also believe that through artistic creation, we'll be able to open up different spaces for dialogue and discussion, which can help in enriching this paradigm and gain momentum in the legal turf as well. We believe that laws, policies, acts for long have been trying to amend us, our societies, and give us a direction to move ahead towards a better world. However, these laws, which are based on the principles of economics, natural sciences, geopolitics, are needed to be guided with tools which can address the issues which are also very much related to our sensibilities, our prejudices, and emotions. Art, which tries to explore and unfold the workings of our emotions, has the potential to address something deep within, address the non rational which seems to be guiding our thought processes and actions. Therefore, a vision for a better and just future can't be just based on the principles of economics, markets, and politics, as the nature of better and just world are possibly based on and intrinsically linked to the philosophies and principles of beauty, happiness, contentment, coexistence, and peace, which artistic endeavors try to explore. Thus, along with the laws and policies, it might also be important to visit the world of art to try and reimagine what rights of rivers really mean. On this note, introducing to you all our artists of the day, Kabini Amin and Purva Goyal. Kabini is a communications designer and illustrator based in Bangalore. An alumna of National Institute of Design, she has worked on a range of projects from corporate branding, educational material, children's books, illustrations, publications, design, etc. With a keen interest in environmental and social justice issues, she has focused the last few years of her work on collaborating with various institutes and organizations from these spheres. She is personally fascinated by how people make meaning in their interactions with the natural world, specifically in food and craft cultures of the world. Purva. Purva is a cartoonist and comic maker based in Assam. She documents stories about people, places, and paradigms through comics. As a graphic storyteller, she has collaborated with a range of experts across disciplines, such as field biologists, independent researchers, social and environmental movements and organizations. She has worked on graphic publications reporting stories about conservation, food sovereignty, and self governance. Purva is interested in the relationships between political, social, and economic factors with environmental changes. And to bring all of this together, we have with us our very own Parinita Dandekar as today's moderator. Parinita Dandekar is an associate coordinator at South Asia Network on Dams, Rivers and People. She is recipient of the Joke Waller Hunter Environment Leadership Fellowship for the year 2009-10 from both ends, Netherlands. Her work involves action research, writing and dissemination, advocacy, and mobilization on issues related to large infrastructure affecting rivers, communities, and ecosystems, and highlighting the positive impacts of community led water management, river rejuvenation initiatives across the state and country. With this, I would like to welcome Parinita, Purva, Kabini to carry forward the session and lead us into their creative minds. Starting with Purva and Kabini's presentation of their design and comic book, followed by a discussion and question and answer session, which will be then followed by an interactive session. So please do keep your pen and papers ready for the interactive session and keep your questions coming in the chat box as well. Over to you, Parinita. You're on mute.
So we passed the first rite of passage of the Zoom meetings to when we started talking on mute. So thank you so much. It's a great pleasure being here today. It's really early morning here, and I don't always say it's a great pleasure to come early morning on meetings, but this is really fantastic to be here because of the colleagues here, the people here, and also because of the subject. It is so close to my heart, and I'm very happy that it's being mainstreamed in this way. So we've always had an sort of a tradition of having rivers. Rabindranath had once said that the difference between the Western art and the Eastern or the Indian art is that in our literature or in our art forms, in our songs and folklore, nature is not a backdrop. It's not just a prop. It is a character in itself. And for all of us who have gone through or just even read snippets out of classical literature like Meghdut or Shakuntal or even Ramayana, the way it's interpreted now is very sad. But if you look at these texts, rivers and forests and wetlands and grasslands are actually characters of their own. So how does this then you see ancient classical literature of various regions like Shilapatikaram from Tamil Nadu. In it, I think Kaveri is even a stronger character, which binds together all other characters of the classic, of the epic. You see rivers spilled over from literature into music. There is an entire genre of music called Bhatiyali, which is only riverine music, which the boatmen used to sing the song when they were going downstream the river during the ebb. You have, institutions like Bhupen Hazarika actually singing the bard of Lohit, of Bor Lohit, of Brahmaputra, singing songs of rivers which are lesser known to the entire country. You have Tyagaraja, who has his devotional songs, hymns, and poetry about Kaveri. I was always fascinated by these art forms surrounding river because when we talk about art and rivers and forests, there's always a feeling of veneration. So Ganga Arati and stuff like that. But the real art forms, and especially the community art forms, they are not only praises and pains which are dissociated from the river itself or the object itself. They are very real. It is in the spirit of poetry. They are actually addressing also an idealistic entity, but also a real entity. So if there is a song on Padma talking about how beautiful Padma is, there's also a song which talks about Sarvanasha Padda Nadi. Or there are also songs and sayings and art forms which actually are complaints of the river. And this is the sort of really well-rounded art forms that we had. Then in the 70s, we had a burst of riverine literature, uh, basically coming from that riverine country of Bengal. It started from Ichamati, it started from Rabindranath Tagore, it started from Bibhuti Bhushan Bandyopadhyay, Aditya Malabarban, uh, Manik Bandyopadhyay, and it's still flowing on. After that, I would like to think that the fictional writing or the art forms surrounding rivers dried up. And this is just hand in hand with how rivers dried up, how rivers were dammed across the country. And it's very interesting to see how art and nature reflect each other. And so the fictional writing uh, about rivers sort of dried up. We did have lots of reports. We had lots of books on rivers which talked about the plight. We had amazing amount of non-fiction coming up. I can think of Prerna Bindra, Janki Lennon, who actually got us involved more and more about so much of writing happened on Narmada. But then this, art was somewhere missing in that entire picture. And then again, we had some troops performing dance forms on rivers, paintings. But what I see today, there are so many newer, younger people. Rohan Chakravarti, we have Bijal Vacharajani, Radha Rangarajan. We have the fantastic graphic artist Amrita Patil, whose latest book called Aranyak actually talks about forests and rivers in the graphic art form. And we have our colleagues today, Kabini and Purva. You should have had a reverse name, so it's very it's very applicable. And it also shows how much we have to learn as the earlier generation. When I was told that they are going to be sharing zines or zines, I didn't even know what it was. And then I actually looked at their work, and I was very honestly spellbound to see their work. The way they have approached rivers is so non-linear, and it is so encompassing and so gentle that from this gentleness and not, we activists are used to say out things out and loud because we want to make our message in the shortest possible form. Poetry doesn't flow like that, neither does graphic art, nor does writing. And so for me, it was an education and a sort of enlightening to see the work of these young colleagues. And it's a real honor to introduce them in this session. Over to you now, Kabini and Purva. If you could handhold us through your process, how did you go about it, and introduce us to your work, that would be great. Starting with you, Kabini. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Parinta, for setting the stage that way. I'm going to be taking you all through the work that I have done, not only through the Rights of Rivers grant, but also other work that I've done around rivers. Just give me a moment to share my screen.
Kabini, unmute yourself.
So it's giving me a notification saying you cannot unmute yourself when sharing computer audio. Let me just try this again. Can you hear me now? And can you see my computer screen?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So today I'll be talking about my zines on the river Betwa. First, though, very quickly, I wanted to talk to you about Vedatam India Foundation and the Moving Upstream Fellowship that I was a part of. Vedatam India Foundation is an attempt at mapping India's rivers and landscapes, essentially through the act of walking along these rivers and through these landscapes, documenting life, culture, the environment, um, and so on. Their projects lie on the intersection of environment, culture, and society, and they are a big proponent of slow journalism, which is to really live and experience the areas that we are trying to talk about. In December of 2019, I spent 10 days walking along the river Betwa from near a town called Ganj Basoda, all the way up till its origin in a village called Jhiri. The river Betwa flows in northern Madhya Pradesh, flowing northward and joining the river Yamuna in Bundelkhand region in Uttar Pradesh. So this was the region that I was walking through, and I have a few pictures of me along the river and different people that I had the pleasure of meeting and interacting with. Now, being an illustrator, designer, my primary mode of documenting my experiences was through my sketchbook. I would sit down at the banks, make live sketches, or at the end of the day, make notes and drawings of things I recalled seeing through the day. Soon after I got back, I wanted to put down my experiences in some kind of visual form. So early last year, I had made two zines, one called From Edge to Edge, which was a visual reportage of just things I had seen and experienced along the river's edge. And I made the zine in such a format that to read it, you had to open it out like a scroll, and it took you on a journey along the river right up to its source the way I did. And the other zine was called Switches Be Crazy, which was homage to the aesthetics of switchboards that I saw all along the river, switchboards for motor pumps for agriculture. So these were two zines that I had created early last year and spent a good deal, and then spent the rest of the year having these experiences and these memories on the back burner. Then earlier this year, I was very fortunate to get a grant from RORSA, supported by Global Green Grants Fund. And I was given a completely open brief to create 3 zines based on my experiences from the Betwa, with no other constraints. So that was, as an artist, both extremely exciting and extremely terrifying, to have the freedom to do whatever. So last year during the lockdown, the COVID pandemic related lockdown, I was under lockdown alone and not in my own home. One of the ways that I was trying to cope with all of the changes and anxiety of things that were going around was to just engage with painting just brush stroke by brush stroke. And I found it to be a very meditative sort of practice, just working with one single pigment and one brush, freeing myself of any other judgments of trying to make something. And so this year, when I did get the grant from RORSA, and I was a little bit stunned, and I found, I had forgotten a lot of my memories, and I had to bring myself back to thinking about the river and thinking about my experience along the Betwa. I decided to once again engage in this meditative drawing practice to just ground myself and bring myself to a quiet place. So while doing this, I memories started coming back to me, and I would write down things that I remember on post-it notes and stick them around in my sketchbook, um, to see if some kind of narrative or thread emerged from all of this. And also the other thing was, while painting this way, I began to see a parallel between painting and walking along the river, just putting one foot in front of the other and taking moving ahead. Um, and started reflecting on the value of these kind of simple repetitive gestures, whether it was people who I saw sowing seeds in the fields, uh, rolling rotis and puris to feed us for dinner, sifting through seeds to plant for the next season. And so the first publication that came out is called How Many Steps? And it is about this contemplative practice of repetitive action, the value of such kind of labor. Um, and I created artwork for this zine using techniques that would only require me to place singular mark after the other in a very deliberate manner. So there is what I began with these, making these small dashes, to embroidery, stippling, and so on. So these are just some glimpses from this publication. The next one that I created is called On Adornment. For me, I view human creativity as a very natural instinct, something that um makes us a part of this world as well as makes us distinctly human. So it's something that I'm fascinated by, how people adorn themselves and the world around them. So I did try to document as many instances of it as I saw. And this publication looks at some of them. And again, I will show you some glimpses of this. So how people use adornment to mark themselves and mark the space that belongs to them, how they use it to assert their own identity, how they use it to express emotion, how they use it to uh, feel a sense of belonging in the world. And lastly, I made a set of illustrations called Ritual Water. I had made drawings live while I was along the paper, and I developed some of these sketches into larger black and white illustrations, and then I put them together in a format of a set of postcards. And these are some glimpses from that as well. Thank you. And over to Purva.
Hello, I'll just start sharing my screen. I'll just take a moment. Hi. So today I'll be sharing a graphic novel that I worked on with support from Rorsa and Kalpavriksha. So Ashish is here today with us. He reached out to me with an initial idea for the story, and then I further developed it into a script and a storyboard, and then eventually the final spreads for the comic book. This is a fictional story based in a river valley. So here in the first page, we see that the birds are behaving in an unusual manner, and the locals suspect that something ominous is about to happen. And the next thing you know is that there's a politician and an industrialist with their JCBs in the village, and they're here to do a survey. They're planning to build a dam in the river valley, across the river. And the industrialist says, look at all that water going to waste. We must put it to some good use. So this is this really anthropocentric view of nature, where we view its resources as something that must be put to use to generate profit. In this case, it's the river's free-flowing water. Moving on. Flyers are being given out, and they read Sabka Vikas. The villagers assume that, oh, this is great, maybe our village will get electricity now finally. But they find out that the electricity that will be produced in this power station will actually be sent to cities far away, and their village will be submerged by the river, the dam's reservoir. So, is it really Sabka Vikas? Is it really everyone's development, where natural resources like the river's water is being diverted to benefit a very small portion of the population, and the cost is borne by the environment and the people who are directly dependent on it. So a couple of frogs stumble upon the flyer, and they're confused. They're wondering, who's this Vikas fellow? What's all this fuss about? And the other frog is just as clueless. She replies, I don't know, but my cousin in the next valley was expecting Vikas last year, and that was the last I heard from her. So disrupting a river's natural flow has a great impact on its ecosystems and biodiversity. For example, in the USA, they found a direct link between dams and the disappearing salmon population in their rivers. And they have started decommissioning their large dams. In India, we have a lot of important species that are lesser known, that are yet to be discovered and studied. And it's very crucial to conserve their habitats. Coming back to the story, so the next day, a group of fisherwomen are heading back after a long day at work, and one of them, Deepu, decides to stay back. As she sits hopelessly waiting to catch just one fish, she feels a tug, and she's struggling to pull out what seems like a big catch, and then she falls into the river and she sinks unconscious to the bottom until she is awoken by this glowy white creature. The glowy white creature introduces herself. She says, I am the river. I have flowed freely for millions of years, sculpting and carving the earth's topography, nurtured billions of creatures, and I am the planet's lifeline. The dam will choke me off. I will die a slow and painful death, as will all else around me and in me, all the animals and plants too, unless you do something about it. The next morning, Deepu finds herself washed up on the river's banks, surrounded by concerned and curious villagers. She starts recounting the events from the previous day. She says, we must save the river from being dammed. We must fight for the rights of the river. But unfortunately, nobody believes her. They think she's lying. They think she's a crying wolf, and she's confused and frustrated because she's not making it up. And once again, she is left alone. Okay, I'm going to stop here. If you would like to know what happens next, you can find the comic on Rorsa's website. It will be uploaded shortly, and we'll be sharing the link with you. And yeah, over to Parinita.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Purva and Kabini. Purva, today is the death anniversary of one of Maharashtra's very important author. And he always used to say, when people used to talk about him, that it's the writing, not the writer. So in the same spirit, you have talked specifically of your work. So it's now our, our sacred duty to talk to you more about your process and how did you actually start doing this. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much, Kabini. I'm totally in awe of your work. So, uh, uh, when I saw Kabini's work, some of the things that really struck me was how many steps. I mean, definitely, this is exactly what the Bhatiyali singer, or so most of the labor, physical labor, which takes part in groups, always is accompanied by songs. So you have songs of harvesting, you have songs of milling grains, you have songs of rowing the boats upstream. So you have boat songs, Nauka Khela songs. And in that sense, I found how many steps very interesting, especially the meditative form of it, because Bhatiyali is when it is Bhati or low tide. So when the river, when the boatman doesn't really have to row against the current, when he's actually flowing along with the current. And that's the time when he still has to do the rhythmic movements, but he can actually free his mind from the actual labor and think about the river and himself. And in many senses, I found your work a sort of Bhatiyali, which was, homage to. Also, something very interesting I found from Kabini's work was we all assume that artists have these specific spaces. They sit very quietly on the riverbanks, make their pictures and drawings, and they have this idyllic experience, very uplifting and stuff. But the reality of India, and I think most of the artists, internal as well as the external world, is not that simple. It's always chaotic. Kabini could hardly actually sit on the riverbanks to complete her pictures. So that was very interesting. With Purvas, I think it's been a long, it's been a long series of people writing about dams. So if you know, some of the the ancient literatures that we have, Rig Veda actually talks about the struggle between the demon Vritra and Indra. And Indra is actually supposed to be the demon slayer, Vritra slayer. And what does Vritra do? It actually binds rivers. And what Indra actually do is he frees rivers from the shackles of Vritra. So there's a very interesting context to it, but simplistically, it's about freeing rivers. From there, you have Rabindranath Tagore's play called Muktadhara. Muktadhara was published in 1923. Imagine in the 20s, when the large dam era was yet to descend upon India or even the world per se. At that time, Rabindranath actually wrote about a dam stopping a flow of river from upstream to downstream, causing plight in the downstream, and then a person actually going and decommissioning the dam itself. And it is based in Uttarakut. I always like to believe that it is based in Arunachal Pradesh, and it is the people of Assam who are actually, going. So, and Purva is from Assam, so it's a very fitting context to all that. Some of Kabini's drawings in her series Rituals, they are fantastic. I mean, they are so. We do come across the usual rituals of fishing, and there are some. We have our conventional notions about. Oh, by the way, I would like to share this news that this context of. I always feel that it's very unfair. You would not have asked Bibhuti Bhushan Bandyopadhyay or Tagore about how do you think your art will affect the reverse movement. So I think it's not up to the artists, it's up to the audience. It's up to the people who actually partake the art and share something with the artist, for them to actually take what they want to take and take it forward. Giving that burden also on the artist's shoulders is unfair. Let them do what they do best. Having said that, Kabini actually walked upstream Betwa, Vetravati, which is featured in so much of literature. It has so much of rich cultural past. It has also featured in Pathar Panchali, right? When Apu actually walks on the banks of Vetravati also. That the Ken-Betwa link, which is going to destroy not only Ken, but also Betwa, which is going to submerge and destroy more than 29 lakh trees, and a major part of the Panna Tiger Reserve has actually received cabinet approval just 2 days back. So that is the context that we are talking through. That is the context that Kabini actually walked upstream Betwa and is sharing stuff about how people's lives are entwined with the rivers, not in a very linear sense only. Because when we talk in the terms, even activists, I mean, though we say that the government only talks in the language of irrigation and hydropower, we also, as our response to it, talk in the same language. So we do not see how a woman there has actually adorned her house and has made a small garden in the entire chaos surrounding her. We do not see the art that actually depicts the river in some way. We do not see the people who sit next to the bank just to grab one moment of solace. But she's done that in her work, and it's really fantastic. And we have to look at that work, the body of that work, in the context of how vulnerable the entire setting is. Just in possibly next 2 or 3 years, it may not be the way it is, unless, of course, there are people who take it forward, and people are taking it forward. I hope the Ken-Betwa link and the false promises are exposed and they do not happen. So thank you, Kabini. Your work is also a step in the entire process, which is trying to save both of these rivers. Let's get into a small sort of introduction and discussion about your work. I would like to ask you both, starting with Purva, how did you actually, because I think that those small moments, you don't really understand them at that moment, but it's interesting for you and for others to look back at that time. But when did you start to work on rivers or on environment through the medium that you have, which is maybe graphic art, writing, making cartoons and drawings? And so when did you start, when did you think of that? And what have been the major influences or inspirations or catalysts for your work? We'll start with Purva and then Kabini, you can take over.
Okay. So for me, this was, I think, a few years ago when I was in the Western Ghats. I was traveling for some field work. I was in Kudremukh and I happened to cross the Yatanahole River. And it was, I mean, this was my first time in the Western Ghats, and I'd always imagined it to be like this pristine landscape. And when I went there, I saw that, you know, the banks of the river were completely dug up. There were huge mounds of mud and these gray cement pipes all over the place. And then I asked around, and then I was told that, oh, you know, they're going to be sending this water to the drier parts of Karnataka, Kolar and other places. And initially it was supposed to be for industrial use and agricultural use, and then there was some resistance. So then they rebranded it as a drinking water project, which made it harder to contend. And the locals were really upset because obviously the water now will be diverted to other parts of Karnataka. And now, you know, what happens to the people who live on the downstream, the ecology of the river, the ecosystems that it supports? And it was absolutely ridiculous. And so I think it is something that made me really angry. And then I started looking into dams, and you know how in school you were always taught that dams are a green source of energy, but I think after so many decades of having, you know, disasters and dams and disasters, I think we know that dams are not a green source of energy. So this is something that I wanted to work on, and that's why I started working on my first independent graphic novel project about the Sharavati River Valley. And this was also the first time I went from short form comics or cartoons to making a long form work, because I wanted to, you know, go deeper into the subject, because I felt like just a cartoon wouldn't do justice to it. I went on field and I kind of wanted to show my viewers, my readers, you know, what is it that has been lost already to unplanned development in the region, in the Western Ghats, and what we run the risk of losing if we continue in the same direction. So that's how I started working on rivers.
It's fantastic. I'm very glad that you started your work with that wonderful basin, Netravati, which has some of the last remaining free-flowing rivers also of the country, like Kumaradhara, where most of small mini hydro projects are being planned. And these are mini hydro. So if a large hydro is clean, green, and sustainable, has the automatic label of being clean, green, and sustainable, small hydro projects are the kings of clean, green, and sustainable. And you only have to look at a place like Kumardhara or the Netravati or Dakshin Kannada in itself, which has some of the richest fish diversity in the entire country, and how these small dams are actually affecting these fish and the habitats and people and irrigation. So it's very interesting to see that the labels are completely false, and a dam is what a dam does. Being small, large, hydropower, irrigation does not automatically make a dam benign. It is what it does, and we need to keep our eyes open. Uh, uh, Netravati has also affected me in many ways. It was one of the rivers because of which I started reading translated poetry from Aghanashini, which is a free-flowing river. And there are so many people like Jayanta Kaikini, who's a leading playwright, songwriter in Karnataka, but he has written series of poems on Aghanashini. So I find this whole circle very enchanting. Thank you so much, Purva. We'll again come back to you. Kabini, could you also share some experiences from your walk up the Betwa? What triggered you to undertake that work? And so what have been your influences, inspirations, and some experiences along the way?
Right. When you asked me why I started working on rivers, and whenever I get asked this question, I like to joke that I'm fated since I'm named after a river. But I think it's a few different things that have brought me here. So the fellowship with Veditam was definitely instrumental, and with that too, I think I was always really fascinated with the idea of walking along, walking through a landscape and using walking as a medium of experiencing things, experiencing spaces and time and yourself. And a few years ago, I had worked on editorial illustration for Current Conservation magazine about the Ken Betwa link project, and just looking at how the claims that the project makes are actually quite unfeasible, and the ground reality, it's not going to be possible what the project is claiming. And so I got interested in this particular river because of that. Because even when you hear of a project and you hear of the opposition to it, there's a lot of times the discussion is in very binary. We don't get into like what are the realities of the situation. It's always pitched as a very this government versus activists, or there's not really much room for the details of the situation. So working on that article was a sort of introduction for me um, on this issue. And so when the Veditam's fellowship crossed my radar and it combined both walking and the river Betwa, it seemed like I had to do this. So that's how I applied and found myself walking along the river Betwa. I'll share one experience which you, I think, very briefly talked about, Parinita, which was the ritual water. And so, of course, you think it's a river, people, that the default association and relationship people have with rivers is, of making it a Devi or Devta, and, holding it in reverence, and there being only that kind of relationship. And while we did see a lot of temples and a couple of instances of people doing pujas along the river. My one favorite memory is of these two men sitting along on one of the check dams and sitting down for their evening drink. And before they began drinking, splashed a bit of their drink into the river and threw a few chips into the river as a ceremonial offering, and then started their evening revelry. Yeah.
So they wanted the river to give them company in all senses. Cheers
Yes.
to that thought. Yes. So yeah. So thank you so much. I was always, I was thinking when I went through your work, and also I would like to again and again mention Amrita Patil's work in this context. Fantastic work, do check it out, especially Aranyaka, her last book, graphic novel on forests and rivers and water. Breathtaking work. I was always thinking that we had, in so much of films, right? So we are, I am a film buff, completely addicted to especially not so good films. So, but then we had so many rivers in our films, right? Right from Nadi Nari Na Jao, it was, Wahida Rahman dancing on the banks of, I think it was Ganga. Then Ore Maji. Look at the songs. It was like the songs, or, the fantastic Pardesiya Ye Sache Piya, Rekha and Amitabh songs. You always had a river in the background, a flowing river. So I think, this sort of depiction of rivers in popular media also shows, because if there is no value given to it by the people, then then it would not be in the imagery. It would not form the imagery of such a commercial medium. And we had rivers in almost all songs that, think about so many songs, there is always a flowing river. And it has been my, I love to do, I'm addicted to looking at a river in the song and trying to find out the location and what river it is. So it's at the same time, I think the last river that I saw in a Hindi film, and not even a mainstream, I could guess, was Machis, Gulzar Saab's Machis. And after that, I've not been seeing rivers at all. So I think the aspirational innocence of having a free-flowing river or a gurgling, bubbling river symbolizing so much has been lost from the common imagination. And I find it extremely sad. I mean, not just sad, it's extremely sad that we've become so, practical in some ways. So let us, I'll club in because we are we are really short of time. So I'm trying to club in two questions in one. Again, I would really like to know what has been your inspiration. I'm personally very keen to know that. But what has been your process? Do you think, because in terms of art forms like Bhatiyali, I've met boatmen who says कि अब नदी ही नहीं है तो हम कहाँ गाना गाएं? So the art form actually withers with the river, and the rivers have been withering for such a long time. So do you see your art happening closer to a river system, or can you just sit at home and do it? Do you need a physical intimacy in some sense that you need to be close to a riverbank at some point of time? So what has been your actual physical process of completing your work? And then the last and the sort of difficult question of how do you see your work being disseminated? Is it easy, the distribution? What has been your experience about it? We'll again start with Purva and go to Kabini.
So one of my key inspirations has been Joe Sacco. He is a comic journalist from the USA, and he has worked on a variety of topics. He has traveled to different parts of the world, places of conflict, and he has documented people and their stories there. For example, one of the most recent works that he's done is also related to the environment, where he traveled to Canada and he documented the effect of fracking on the Dene people. and their ecosystem and their lives there. And another great work on dams is Arijit Sen's River of Stories. It's a graphic novel again. And yes, and sorry, what was the other part of the question? I'm just kind of.
Yeah, so how do you look at the distribution and dissemination of your work?
Right. Right. So I think it's kind of difficult to gauge how your work is going to be received and its reach once it kind of leaves your studio, so to speak, once it's out there. But I think the work that I've done with Kalpvriksh so far, we've been trying to translate the comic books into as many regional languages as possible. And some people have been really kind. They've volunteered to, do the translation, and then we kind of we've I think dissemination is a big challenge. It's a big. I think it's a full-time job in itself, and
Absolutely.
always tricky. And even though social media is marginally more accessible, it has its limitations, both in terms of access and the medium itself. And then there's print, which is kind of going obsolete. So it's kind of, yeah, it's a challenge. Dissemination is a bit of a challenge. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. It's as expected. Kabini, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So influences, I'd like to talk about one of somebody I encountered and something I encountered while along the Betwa, who is Mataram Meena, who was in the village called Dadrod. And I will also talk about her to tell you about my influence, I suppose. So this was a woman who'd spent the past decade almost decorating her house. And she says that she started doing this after her husband passed away to sort of while away her time. And so, I see it as a sort of grief processing. And to see that work, which has completely, enveloped her entire space, and it's something that she gives herself up to completely. Her daughter-in-law says that she'll forget to eat, and she'll just wake up in the morning and start doing this. And she works with whatever material she has on hand, from wedding invitations to calendar art to little bits of tinsel and shiny paper and plastic flowers and so on. And for me to see that, having come from a sort of design background where you're taught to really rationalize all your decisions and be very calculated about how you put things together, to see something like this, which is just emotion converted into expression in a very, very unfiltered manner. And for someone to give themselves to it completely. So I think that was quite a big flip in my brain. And to also sort of decondition myself of this heavy rationalization that we put onto our work, and actually allow ourselves to express, because there is so much space for talking about beauty and joy and sadness and all of these things that we feel when we are in natural spaces. Whether it is just experiencing something really beautiful in nature, or feeling terrible about the situation, whether it's dams or deforestation, and for ourselves to just let that emotion come through, and without judgment, I suppose. So I don't know how this answers your influence question, but I think for myself, I've been trying to put myself in this process of, letting go of the heavy rationalization and allowing myself to make space for emotional reactions to nature and rivers, and the world around us. Um, and the question of dissemination, it is tricky, as Purva said. There are so many things we could do, and there's always the challenge that we're in these echo chambers, and we just keep reaching out to the same people over and over again, and it's the same people who will see the work. Um, Trying to get it out in multiple languages is certainly one way to break out of that. But I think, I don't know, each work has its own kind of audience, and we hope that people who find it connect with it. So I don't know if it's necessarily a numbers game as much as I hope that the people who are meant to find it find it.
Absolutely. I think that's a that's a fantastic thing that you said. We always find the things we're looking for, and people do find what they want to find. At the same time, I really wish that distribution is easier for you, dissemination is easier for you. I know it must be even tougher in COVID times. The industry itself, publication and dissemination itself is suffering so much. So let us hope that these publications and these works reach the hands which are looking for them. I'm very keen on understanding how do the locals from where, for most of the art forms, I'm keen on this question, that how do the people where the work is situated, how do they look at this work? So, but we'll come to that later. Just there was this very interesting question in the chat box from Kriti. From Kriti Patel, who would like to ask you that, do you have a feeling of do you have a feeling of a sense of being an outsider and trying to tell a story of communities who actually live along the river and who have had first-hand experiences? I find it very interesting. I would also like to ask you that. So do you have, through your work, do you think that, do you have it very clear in your mind that you really are, we all are in that sense, outsiders trying to tell a story which actually belongs to someone else? I guess most of the storytellers, except the Sutradhars in the traditional tales who are a part of the story, most of the storytellers are outsiders. And I think being an outsider is very important also, because it gives you a sort of a slightly distant perspective, a forest view of what is happening. But how do you see it? I think it's an interesting question. Anyone who would like to take this?
Okay. I think, yes, it's always challenging to kind of, and also a kind of strange position to be in, telling somebody else's story. But once there was an instance when I was on field and I was, I'd been drawing the place. I had spent the entire day drawing things. And somebody saw me drawing, and they came to me and they were like, oh, can we see this? And they started looking at the drawings, and they cracked up. They were like, oh wow, like, we have never seen our place with this lens, or like, because we live here, we haven't seen it through your eyes, through a fresh set of eyes. So I think that is something that maybe an outsider brings, where things that somebody who lives in a landscape takes for granted. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we will always be, like you said, an outsider. And for instance, during my fellowship, where I was very clearly an outsider in this space. And it is something that I struggled with quite a lot, even when making work, talking about the experiences to friends, things that we saw is, who am I to tell this story, and so on. But I suppose the reasoning I've come to is that I can't take ownership of the story itself, but I can only take ownership of my perspective, or my processing, or my understanding of that story. And that's what we bring as artists. We bring our own processing and expression of those stories. And I suppose that's where I stand with it.
Thank you so much. It's a very interesting perspective that you said, and I think it's also very relevant. Most of the art forms, it's always a two-way process, the artist and the audience. I think with art forms like yours, it's a three-way process. It's the subject, the artist, and then the audience. And each will come up with their own perspectives, and possibly the other stage may or may not take the same perspectives. They may have completely different way of looking at the same things. So that's interesting. At the same time, I do think that yes, we also need to work, and we also need to be the enablers and use the platforms that we have uh, to enable more and more people from the river to be able to tell their stories. Because river stories in India, I always look at the comparison between the river stories, like for example in the United States, the river stories which Mark Twain tells us about Mississippi, and the Native Americans' tales about Mississippi have a completely different quality to them. I'm not saying that one quality is higher than the others, but the fact is, the qualities of both of these things are entirely different. One is an outsider, someone who drives a steamboat and looks at the river, and one is someone who lives the river. So there is a difference. So though Rabindranath Tagore did spend 10 years on the Padma in a houseboat and wrote, Chinna Patrabali or letters from Padma, he was still not a fisherman on the banks of Padma, like Advait Malabarman was. And so you see an entire difference of perspective between what he writes and what Tita Shakti Nadir or that story presents to you. So I think we really need more and more river people also writing their own stories. But I think this is a process. It is through art which will encompass more art. So this is a beginning. Thank you so much. If there are any questions, we can only take one or two quick questions and then move on to the interactive sessions. So I guess we can start with the interactive sessions, and then if there are any questions coming in from the audience, we can also take them. So I would just like to close this by sharing this. So when Amitav Ghosh wrote The Great Derangement, in his introduction, he actually said that in the later times when cities like Bangkok and New York are actually submerged and climate change impacts have become more and more stark, there are people who will be looking at literature and art to see back that what have been the portents of the disaster which is now upon them. And when they see that there are that the art and literature and the museums completely ignored this time and had no reflections of this time, then it will think that this era of self-awareness is actually the era of the great derangement. So I think in this sense, you are the messengers who do not let us fall in that trap. It's an extremely important work that you're doing. So let us start with interactive sessions. If there are some questions coming in, we can take them through, or we can take them later. But I think this is the time to start with interactive sessions. Over to you, Kabini and Purva, as you would like to take.
Thanks. I was just thinking, Parinita, also of your comment about how we don't see rivers in songs anymore. And I think that's true of nature imagery in general in Bollywood. Romance was so intrinsically tied with a garden or, mountains, snow-clad mountains, or waterfalls and, erotica and so on. And you don't see that imagery anymore. I mean, now romantic songs are set in clubs or, some kind of constructed background. So perhaps, and I think it follows a similar timeline as not seeing rivers anymore. So I think it speaks to a larger imagination.
I think that's why seeing, Drushti Shruti, there are so many ways of understanding the world around us. And Drushti is so important. Ways of seeing are so important. And so more and more that we expose ourselves and people around us to the visual medium, also the soundscapes. Siddharth, I would really like to take this point, a moment to thank you for the range of experiences that you're putting out through Moving Upstream. There is a soundscape on Betwa on their website. You guys have to check it out. It is only sounds of the river, from a chaotic city to a small rural setting, to cows, their bells, to women, children making a din, and the river itself. And it's fantastic. I guess I've never heard something like that. And there are so many ways through which we can experience a river. And when it is dammed, all these sounds of the river stop. And we don't even know how the fish sing. It's a different thing altogether. But the river is silent, and this is the first time that I so Siddharth, a great shout out to you, fantastic work. Thank you so much for exposing us to all this. Off to Purva.
So I will share the interactive session.
While Purva shares her screen, I hope you all have your sheets of paper and pens or pencils ready. If not, you could use a few moments to get them ready.
Is my screen visible to everybody?
No.
No?
No.
All right. Okay, strange. Sorry, I just need a minute.
No problem. So I would really like to ask the audience, how many of you actually have heard of the word zine? I was so stunned when I heard of it. I had no clue what it meant. So thank you so much also for updating us to the new forms of expressions.
Is it visible now?
No. Can anyone help
Okay.
Purva with her screen sharing?
Hi, Purva. Do you know what the problem is, or what the problem may be? Do you have it in full screen yet, or maybe?
Well, for me, it says that you are screen sharing, and for me, it seems like it's going as per usual.
Can you try and settle it in an internal chat? And in the meantime, Kabini, can you see if your screen is shareable?
Sure.
Purva, can you talk with the technical crew and see if it's
sure.
Yeah, we can see your screen, Kabini. Yeah. Kabini, unmute yourself.
Okay, can you
yeah
see my screen and hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you too. Yes.
Okay, all right. So I think we had planned to have some music playing, but and had set up Purva's computer to be able to do all of that. So unfortunately, due to these tech issues, we will not have music.
We'll start off and see if that sort of picks up.
Sorry, I think we can still have the music. I think. Is this audible?
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get started then. I hope you all have your sheets of paper and pens or pencils ready. Just 2 sheets of either A4 paper, printer paper, or normal notebook paper, plain, ruled, checked, whatever is fine. We'll begin by folding and binding your papers to make a zine. You place both your sheets together and fold them in half. And roughly 1 centimeter from the folded side, just crease it and fold the crease over. If you have a pair of scissors or a stapler handy, you can just go ahead and staple it and very quickly be done with the binding. Or if you have a pair of scissors handy, make 3 notches in the crease section and fold those tabs alternatively. If you don't have either, that's completely fine. The crease that you make will hold your zine together temporarily. So I'll give you all a minute to just get everything in place. And if you have any questions at any point during this process, just please feel free to leave it in the chat box. Okay, moving on. When you open the very first page, the page that you have on the left-hand side, I would like you all to answer these following questions. Which river are you nearest to? How far away is it? Which river basin are you a part of? And name one of the river's tributaries. If you know the answers to this, that's great. You can write it down right away on this page. If not, and you need to do a bit of research, please note down the questions and you can answer them later on. And you can take 2 minutes to answer these or note down the questions.
Kabini, do you think you can make it full screen, please?
I've already put it on slideshow. I'm not sure why it's doing only this much.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
There we go.
All right. All right, moving on. We're going to be providing you with a few prompts for the next few pages. And these prompts, we have noted down a few questions that can help you think about these prompts. Think of these questions simply as a way to get your imagination going. You don't need to answer each one of them literally, but you can make a note of them if it helps you to think about it further. So on the same spread, the page that is there on the right-hand side, we'd like you to create a word cloud. Now, word cloud is just all of the words, phrases, sentences that comes to your mind when you think of rights of rivers. We also encourage you to think about this in languages other than English, so you can articulate them in other languages. So what are the things that come to your mind when you think of rights of rivers? What rights do you think rivers should have? Are there rights you can think of apart from the ones that were stated right in the beginning from a technical perspective? Can take a couple of moments to think about this.
Yeah, Kabini, can we go ahead?
All right. Yes. Okay. So please turn the page over, and on the page that you have on the left-hand side, I'd like you to revisit a memory of a river that you have. It could be the last river you visited, or just something that left an impression in your mind for whatever reason. Um, think about what the landscape was like. How much water was there in the river? Was the river flowing, or was it behind a dam? What other kinds of sights do you remember? Any animals, birds, particular plants or trees? What did you do when you were there, and how did you feel? What season was it? Um, and I'd encourage you to draw out how much ever of this memory. But if that feels a little intimidating, please feel free to write as well. Or a mixture of writing and drawing, stick figures, uh, diagrams, whatever feels comfortable to you. And you can take 3 to 4 minutes with this. All right, let's move on to the next one. Purva will take over from here.
So the next exercise, we will be drawing a river spirit. You could imagine it however you like. It could be a person, animal, mythical, fantasy creature, or amorphous being. Is it gendered? Is it wearing anything? Does it have any particular props, talismans, or tools? What kind of sense organs would it have? I think you have 3 minutes to do this. Okay, moving on to the next slide. For the next exercise, we will be drawing a 3-panel comic strip. You can draw 3 boxes on the spread, as you've shown here, or you could put it however you like. And we have taken a quote from K.K. Chatradhara, or Bhai, who is an environmentalist in the Northeast. He said, "Nadi ko khelne, khilane aur behne do. Let the river play, feed and flow." So you can visualize these 3 words in any way you like in these 3 boxes. So the first one is khelne, or play. What does the river's playground look like? Who does she play with? What games does she play? The second word is khilane, or to feed. What or whom does the river feed? The third word is behne, or to flow. Where does the river flow? What flows with her? What are her different paces and patterns? These are obviously cues. You are free to interpret it however you like. So yes. You have 5 minutes for this exercise.
Yeah, Purva, can we go on from here?
This is the end of the interactive session.
Mm-hmm.
You can put your name. You can think of a name for your zine and put it on the cover, and you can maybe do a drawing. You can doodle or fill it with words or whatever you like for the cover page. And at the back of your zine, you can put your name, date, and your river basin. And you can do this in your own time, and you can complete any incomplete exercises. And once you're ready, you can share your river zine with us on the email on the slide. And you can also upload your river zine on social media and tag Rorsa. on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook with the hashtag graphic ROR or hashtag ROR Rorsa. Yes.
Thank you so much. This has been I was just trying to draw the Rio Grande. I just visited the Rio Grande a week back, and because of what you said, I'm pathetic at drawing or any of these pursuits. But because of you, I realized that the autumn leaves which are actually falling fall into the river, and then the leaves actually become the fish, and that is the cycle, the nutrient cycle. That because the riparian plants provide nutrients to the fish, and that is also why the cottonwood tree, which is the riparian tree of it's very interesting that in India we have a lot of poetry about rivers. I think the defining character of art, and I thank you because of you that I thought of this, but I think the defining character of art around rivers or the kind of work that you do is that it always brings things together, right? It's very difficult to have an art form and not try to bring things together. So it's in Jivanananda Das's poetry that when he talks about the Dhanasri river, he doesn't only talk about the river. He talks about the grasses, the ducks, the geese, and the trees next to the river. When Kabini draws Betwa, she doesn't only draw the river, she actually also draws the men who drink on the banks of the river and the women who bathe on the banks as well. And I think this is what the story is about, right? Or this is what art is about. It should enable us to see the interactions and the linkages and the part of the pattern of the lived world that we are a part of. So thank you so much. We also came to know the audience also very interestingly talked about how there is a need for not just a need, but also an imperative for the storytellers of the rivers to tell their stories. And we hope that we not only are able to enable them to do that, but we are also able to give them the patient and the respectful hearing, which all such stories which have flowed down as old as the river actually deserve. Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure talking with you. If the audience has one or two quick questions, we can discuss that. Or if you have any concluding remarks, we could go back to you. But for me, thank you so much. You sort of really expanded my entire understanding of the rivers and the art forms. And that's not a mean feat. I think it's a very significant thing. And as you realized, we have not asked you the question of how do you see your art helping the cause of rivers? Because it's not up to the artist, it's up to the audience. It's up to us to use the art and see how it affects us. And in some way, if the roots go deep enough, it will inspire us to take this further. So I think you should be asking us that question, and I hope we have a worthy answer for you. Thank you. Over to you, Radhika.
Thank you so much.
Any concluding remarks from both of you? Quick. Purva and Kabini? Sorry, Radhika.
Well, thank you, Parinita. I mean, your comments have really humbled me for sure. I think we tend to, just stay in our little studios and create work and don't so much think about how it affects other people and how other people see it. So it's always very lovely to hear remarks from people who've engaged with the work and connected with it. Thank you so much. And thanks to Rorsa for making this happen, for giving us the space to make work, for giving us the space and time to show it to all those who are here today. Thank you.
Okay, I actually feel that we should not be speaking after this, but for some formalities. There's a very beautiful suggestion by Sunita Jariwala. She says, I would love Rorsa to have indigenous artists and storytellers to redo this session. That is a really beautiful thought. And I was just thinking this would be so beautiful if we could organize this next time right next to a river. So hopefully, fingers crossed, and we will definitely think and plan for something like this. Thank you so much, Parinita, Kabini, and Purva, for sharing such beautiful insights. I'm definitely going to go back and listen to the beautiful songs which you have been mentioning. I also felt it has been ages since I even heard them. So definitely should go back and listen to them. And I feel the interactive session was really helpful because it helped us to go back into our memories and relive our experiences of the riverscapes, and including the smell, sound, the sights, the touch of different elements of a riverine ecosystem. And this is exactly what Rights of Rivers is trying to say, that we need to conserve such spaces for us and our future generations and for the entire nature, so that we can keep experiencing these beautiful relationships and live our life to the fullest. So before we end, we would really love to see your zines. So please do share them with us and also tag us on social media. We would love to see your versions of zines or zines, and different interpretations are also always welcome. So concluding, bringing us towards the end of this session, if there are any questions, comments, please do share, and we'll just pause for a few seconds and see if there are any concluding remarks from people.
There was a question from someone asking about the soundscapes and where they can access it. I think they should go to the Veritam or the Rorsa website and they could find it there.
And the link has also been shared in the chat box.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you each and everyone for this beautiful session, and also do not forget to join Rorsa, to subscribe to Rorsa, so that you can be part of our upcoming events and projects and ideas. And so yeah, tune in and let's see how the journey takes us ahead.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. And please do share your zines online. We'd love to see.